Ready? Mm-hmm. I'm Gary YouTube, and I'm here to say I like tears, me.
That's a bit mean, isn't it?
What?
Sounds like you like upsetting people.
I like tears.
I like tears.
Cultaholic once again putting you in tears. We're here once again, a couple of Gary YouTubers, to do some Gary YouTubing in the form of a tier maker rank thing. How are you doing today, Gary?
Oh, Gary, I'm having a great day, Gary. Thanks for asking me.
Bloody hell, Gary. Hit the intro, Gary. So just in case you are new to this Gary YouTubing malarkey, we're going to put some things into a tier thing here. We have different tiers ranking from worst to best, but it's not to be confused with the series with the same title on this very channel. It's different in so many ways. Not be, just because Gary's in that's the main one. So we have the best, lovely, 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 all right, middle of the road, just about bearable, then the bottom, which is green for some reason, because semantics would tell you, and connotations and all that, long
green
words and stuff.
Green is grass, which is on the ground.
Oh.
Well, green is go. Actually, yours is better. Green is go away.
Into the bin.
Into the bin.
So we're going to do the golden era. Well, the 80s portion of the golden era. We're not too sure what the title for this video will be. You will obviously know by now because you've seen the title just below us here. So whatever the powers that be go with it.
Basically sort of mid to late 80s WWF, sort of rock and wrestling WWF. This is before before the uber wild, colourful, character-filled 90s. So this is sort of like in the early stages of the era. It's the 80s, basically.
It's the 80s. It's the
80s. It's Knight Rider.
You know, when you're Tom's age and you go out for a fancy dress and a stag do or something, you're going to dress up as one of the following wrestlers, aren't you?
Absolutely.
Cool. If you were to dress up as one of them, who would you be?
Oh, well, do you know what? I'm trying to think if I've dressed as any of them in the past.
I have.
Yes, one of the first names we're coming to is going to be you. I think as we get to them, I will tell you who it's going to be.
Interesting.
I think we will.
Bit of a tantaliser to start the video, but we're kicking things off with Brother Love, and he goes in the best tier, doesn't he?
I think, genuinely, I'd like to put Bruce Pritchard in the best. Great talk show.
Are they the same man? That's just the thing with Conrad.
Oh my God.
Bloody hell.
Chat me up on this. Why is he the best? Great talker.
Great storyteller.
Excellent interview segment.
Lovely skin.
The man who in the 90s would give us The Undertaker.
Yes, he would. Out of his loins and everything. But you watch the Brother Lugs, it's obvious where he got the inspiration from, but bloody hell did he do the role very well.
Incredibly well.
Fantastically well. I don't know what more you need to say about Brother Love. The highlight of Brother Love's career?
I genuinely think the highlight of Brother Love's career, there was a couple of segments on the Brother Love show. I personally loved the segment with Jake the Snake Roberts after he'd been blinded by Rick Martel, but that's in the 90s.
Oh,
we can't really talk about that.
After this era.
After this era. It's leaning towards the 90s, so we can't talk about it, but that's a particular highlight for me.
Mine's when he came out of a box and then hugged The Undertaker. How nice is that?
I love
Followed by a dog, or was it just after a dog? After a dog, wasn't it? Next up, we have Akeem, the African Dream. And Tom, you might be able to tell us some more about this.
Okay.
Are the rumours true? Was this a piss take of one Dusty Rhodes?
It was indeed. It was a little bit of a nudge towards Dusty, who at this point was working for the National Wrestling Alliance. So eventually Dusty would come in to the fold in the WWF, and they'd take the mick out of the guy to his face instead.
That polka dot wasn't burying him, as they like to tell us all the time.
But Akeem's on here, but this is kind of Akeem / the one-man gang. So both men sort of were dominant figures in the 80s. There was a whole segment involved the Reverend Slick taking the one-man gang into like this dusty part of town, and he kind of, through the power of wizardry, found himself. Yeah,
maybe we should put him in the bin.
The thing is, I don't want to put him in the bin.
We're not putting him in the bin, just to tie into that segment.
Do you know what? It would make sense.
For old time's sake.
I'm going to put Akeem in all right. I thought, one thing I love about One Man Gang in this particular role is he did just throw himself into it. It's ridiculous in when you look back on it in hindsight, but he threw himself into it.
Snake hips is what I'm thinking.
Snaky.
One Man Gang or Akeem?
I personally prefer, in terms of entertainment, Akeem.
So do I.
But One Man Gang is a massissive part of his life. He came back into the gimmick battle royal as One Man Gang.
WrestleMania 17.
Probably because Akeem's a bit questionable in 2020, but here we go.
And in 2001. Next up, we have Andre the Giant, and what more needs to be said?
We gotta put the 8th wonder of the world in the best.
Your favourite Andre the Giant moment from from the 80s, I should say.
Ripping the cross off of Hogan's neck. Off of his. I challenge you to a World Wrestling Championship match at the WrestleMania. The night that Andre the Giant turned his back on his friend Hulk Hogan, and Hogan realised, oh no, now this massive giant wants to come for my belt.
And my tits are bleeding as well to make it all the more worse. Oh yeah.
What's incredible is that Andre the Giant had the best moments of his career in what is considered the twilight of his career. In the late 70s, early 80s, Andre could move. It was terrifying. And it was only when when WrestleMania 3 happened that he really became a star, but he was in absolute agony for most of his life by that point, which is why when you watch WrestleMania 3, when you watch that main event, it's not a 5-star match, but it's a moment in time.
That bloody you say what you want about Hogan these days, but that camera shot right at the start, with all the flashbulbs going in the background, him and Andre tits to tits in the ring, just having a good old stare down. It's spine tingling, Thomas.
Absolute moment in time.
Tingling.
Andre the Giant, absolute love.
And shout out, I think it was it that bloody series that came out recently? What was it? Vice.
The Dark Side of the Ring.
Did they do one about Andre?
No, but there was a HBO special on Andre the Giant.
I'm getting them mixed up. That is a fantastic watch. It gives you a whole new appreciation for what he went through, just living life.
There was a picture of him on a plane.
Yeah.
And it was just, bless him.
This world was not built for him.
Absolutely not. Literally, in every sense, larger than life. And what a guy.
So next up, we have Bad News Brown.
Now, Bad News, I'm putting in Lovely, Lovely, Lovely.
Why? I only know one, because I've got to admit, as you're probably telling by the start of this video already, my 80s knowledge is not up to scratch.
When were you born?
1992.
See, this is
That's
it.
not, I should be a wrestling historian in my role as YouTube twat.
As Gary YouTube. See, I'm the elder statesman Gary YouTube here, because I'm 1984.
But my only recollection of Bad News Brown, was it the feud with Roddy Piper?
Yes.
And is that what the half and half paint?
He daubed half his face in black paint. The black paint that was so strong that actually Roddy couldn't get it off his face.
And he went home through airports with looking like that.
Oh my
fantastic!
Days.
All
Bad News. Bad News and Roddy had a phenomenal rivalry, but Bad News was actually capable of so much more, and I don't think he lived up to his full potential in the WWF. I feel like he could have genuinely been a higher flight contender, a really strong wrestler, incredible bad guy. Really dislikable bad guy. Really big fan of Bad News Brown. Came into his own at the end of the WrestleMania 4 Battle Royal when him and Bret Hart had a tete-a-tete. The night that Bret Hart became a goodie. It was a WrestleMania Battle Royal moment. Big fan of it.
But as I say, I'm not too familiar with Bad News Brown. The only thing I do know is from that Roddy Piper feud, and the reason Roddy Piper did paint himself like that was because he didn't believe so the reports go, he didn't believe that Bad News Brown had the charisma to hold up his half of the feud. So he was like, oh well, I'll do it for him. Here comes the paint. I'll face one way, that's me. I'll face the other way, that's Bad News Brown.
You could you watch that now and you go,
is that true?
Wow.
Is that true in your opinion?
There is talk that Piper and Bad News were at loggerheads during that time, and it wouldn't shock me if Piper went, that's why I'm going to do it. And you couldn't do it now.
So next up we have a name that's really surprising to me in the 80s sense, because I always thought he was just solely 90s, but Bam Bam Bigelow.
Bam Bam's lovely, lovely, lovely for me. I almost tempted to put him in the best, actually.
I think he deserves to be in the best, mate.
Let's pop him in the best. He was, a lot of
in terms of what he did during the 80s, though, is he in the best?
See, there's your thing. I might pop him back to lovely, lovely, lovely. Sorry, Bammer aficionados. But, the iconic moment for Bam Bam Bigelow in the 80s was the first ever Survivor Series, in which we had Bam Bam Bigelow on Team Hogan taking on Team Andre. And through one thing or another, Hogan's team got whittled down to just Bam Bam Bigelow. Bigelow had to fight the odds, including a collision with Andre the Giant, which was tantalising, because Bam Bam was a face at this point, managed by Oliver Humperdinck. It's still a great name to say.
Yeah, it is a great name.
Oliver Humperdinck, by the way, goes in the same category as Bigelow, so I'm putting him in lovely, lovely, lovely. He do loads of good stuff in the 90s. I genuinely think that Bam Bam Bigelow would never reach his full potential. I think he's one of those guys that you could have made a world champion.
Of course you could have.
A big guy that can move. Never really got the true love that he did, but he did some good stuff in the 80s. And the fact that he moved just as well in the 80s as he did in the 90s is testament to his cardio and his ability. Obviously no longer with us is Bam Bam, but big love to Bigelow. Lovely, lovely, lovely.
Yeah, he is. He was lovely, lovely, lovely all the way through until the WCW days when he was in the hardcore scene. That's where I'm most familiar with him. Greetings from Ashbury Park and all that malarkey in his baggy jumper and tights combination.
It was
See you later.
It was an interesting look near the end of his time. Very strange time.
But next up we have someone you have probably dressed up as a fancy dress. I know I almost did. I was almost forced to it. What culture? That's besides the point. Bam Battered, Big Boss Man.
All right, Big Boss Man for me. Lovely, lovely, lovely. My first memory of wrestling. One of my first memories of wrestling was a steel cage match between Hulk Hogan and the Big Boss Man.
Outdoors.
No, indoors.
Was it indoors?
It was an indoors one, I believe. It was in the run-up to WrestleMania 2 or 3. It was in the run-up to WrestleMania, and it featured a suplex off the top of the cage, which in the 80s was was the death move. Like nowadays, you'll transition that into a Canadian destroyer, but like that was the death move, and Hogan and Bossman would just lay on the floor for what felt like an eternity after this suplex off the cage. Bossman would later on, like as the golden era would start to flourish, Bossman would trim down. He'd get himself a bit of a babyface makeover. He'd have the jailhouse match with the Mountie, and and he would become.
That didn't end well for the Mountie.
It did not, but it made some
bad things
television.
happened to him in that prison cell.
Don't you love how leather feels against your body? But at this point, Bossman was just a big badass. Him and Akeem, the Twin Towers, did some good stuff, but I slightly rate him over Akeem. He's in lovely.
I think that's more than fair enough. Big Boss Man who could move better? Big Boss Man and Bam Bam Bigelow. That's
Bigelow.
Do you reckon?
Yeah, I think Bossman, when he trimmed down, had a lot more pace to him. Like he was moving and doing some kicks and some dives through the ring that were phenomenal later in his time. But during the 80s, he was a bit slower and a bit chunkier.
I was going to say, if younger viewers have ever wondered where big baldy bastard Baron Corbin gets that thing where he gets out the ring quickly, back in, clothesline, Bossman, isn't it?
It's a Bossman thing. It's a
bloody Bossman move. So next up we have Big John Studd, and if you're going above all right, I'm having serious words with you.
Are you not a fan of Big John Studd?
I never got in me. He's just a big man. Fee, fi, fo, fum. But not in the way that Andre was, because Andre had a bit of an aura about him.
He was kind of the last, like, his real big stand was WrestleMania against Andre. They did a body slam challenge. And it was kind of like, hey, Andre, you can't slam me. And Andre goes, yeah, I can. Done, mate.
So he allegedly was a bit of a diva backstage, wasn't he?
There was talk that he was a little bit of a bossy boots. Hence why, like, in terms of like the giants that I remember, Big John Studd, Martin Aubrey amongst them. So I will, you know what? I will.
What are his redeeming features? Obviously, Royal Rumble winner. Back in the day.
I think with Studd, I think he filled a void before Andre was really a true factor in WWF. But then when Andre came in and Andre was picking up speed, it was just like he was, like there was a couple of bits later on where he turned face and sort of became a ringside guy. But like you say, he didn't have the charisma of an Andre the Giant, so we will pop him in all right.
So next up, we've got a man who I've only seen wrestle, I think, at WrestleMania 3. And I can't even remember that very well because I was...
He is such an anomaly. Billy Jack Haynes.
What do you know about Billy Jack Haynes?
He came out to the ring chomping a cigar and looked cool as hell. But then, obviously there'll be people watch this who will be able to reel off all the matches he had in independent wrestling promotion, like mountain-based wrestling alliance forever. But I don't have a massive understanding of him, so I kind of want to put him
just about
there, just because he didn't do enough in the WWF to warrant any major credential, but he was part of the WWF during this kind of the 80s period that we are discussing. So there he goes.
You know what? I think it's lost in coverage as a whole in the media. You're not allowed to say, I'm not too sure about him, are you? You're never allowed to say, I don't know too much about him.
Yeah.
I think it's all right to go once in a while. I don't know too much about somebody. Just shows you telling the truth, doesn't it?
It's
then when
true.
you start speaking about stuff you do know about, it gives you a bit more credence, doesn't it?
I think it's funny because like some of the stuff that people have said about us on the channel, they both say, I like that you're human, and at the same time, why don't you know everything ever? Like, well, what do you want? What do you want from us?
And I guess these tier lists as a concept, it's just your personal opinion, isn't it? How it feels to you. And then you disagree or you agree. And that is the circle of life. Next up, we have the Blue Bloody Blazer.
That being said, I want to pop him there. I think if the Blue Blazer could have been a real thing in the 90s, but what happened is Owen Hart then moved on to team with Coco Beware as High Energy, Jim Neidhart as the New Foundation.
Trousers.
Boy, no, right. But then he would come into his own as the King of Hearts, Owen Hart, and him and Bret would have a scorcher of a feud during an incredibly difficult time for the WWF. More on that in another tiered list. But I love the Blue Blazer. I thought it was a really silly, wacky gimmick.
It was.
That existed in it sort of, as we're kind of moving into this character-driven time. Like, it was a little bit before its time. But I liked it.
It had
Owen's great.
all your basic superhero tropes, but because it was Owen Hart, and he's one of those wrestlers that got the irony of professional wrestling when it was ironic, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It just made it work, didn't it? I didn't really enjoy it back in the Attitude Era, but we're not talking about that now. Obviously, Owen didn't want to do it. He wanted to go home.
Yeah.
Wanted to be a fireman and all that jazz, and we know how it ended, and that was a massive shame. Biggest travesty in wrestling history, some could say, some would say, I might say, yeah. But we'll move on to someone who we don't need. It's Bobby the Brain. It's Bobby the Brain.
Up the top, isn't he?
Bobby the Brain is top of the top.
He is right next to a guy who I genuinely think
is his son.
Is the one thing about Andre the Giant, like, he is the best. He is one of the greatest giants in the history of wrestling. But the one thing that he lacked was promo.
Talking.
Like the day that he handed Ted DiBiase the World Wrestling Federation Tag Team Champion of the World, which was the WWF title. Like, he was never he never was great for promos. But that's why you had Bobby Heenan, the greatest talker in the world, who was the man that turned Andre against his friend, poisoned his mind, and Bobby Heenan would turn his hand to so many, the Heenan family as they were known, and anytime Heenan walked out with a wrestler, it added gravitas. And especially if you were a wrestler that, whilst you had the great ability, you may not have had the charisma, to quote Ross Tweddell.
Who quoted Chris Jericho, by the way. Clint Bobsky, sorry.
Oh.
That's who said charisma the first time.
Of course, it's a big old Clint one. But Bobby, easily the best.
We don't need to say anything else, do we?
Say no
Unbelievable.
more.
So next up we have a man who was one of the biggest dicks in professional wrestling history. And no, not because he gave birth to Randy Orton. No, he didn't produce Randy Orton. We have Cowboy Bob, who was an arsehole with a cast on his hand. Whoa! I wasn't expecting that.
Thing is, like,
that man as a heel needs to be, just because he made everyone emote so much, surely he's just higher above just about bearable. Or is that you being within the realms of kayfabe?
Oh, I'm kayfabe, he's not very nice, is he? Yeah. I'll put him in all right.
Why?
I don't think he did a massive amount in the WWF. I think he did loads elsewhere. I think he happened to exist in the main event of WrestleMania 1 that's kind of sealed his career. The stuff with the cast, I think, was probably the best stuff he ever did. The idea that this guy's had a cast on his arm for 1,000 years. And it's like, all that arm must never heal, but he constantly uses it as a weapon. I like that. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't think he did a massive amount.
When you're saying that, yeah.
I'm basing it on WWF in the 80s. So
yeah,
I'm looking at it through this small little scope. And, in other places, I'm sure he did great things. He gave us Randy Orton. And
he's a bastard.
And he's a bastard.
No, but I'm only going off what everyone says in the wrestling documentaries and stuff. Just what they've said about Cowboy Bob. That was my opinion based off that. I'm going to be truly transparent in this video, because what's the point in lying?
Exactly.
Next up, we have the old Brainbusters, Arn Anderson and Tully.
So
the Scott Wilder and Dash Dawson.
Scott Wilder and Dash Dawson.
Have you seen his new name, by the way? Apparently Cash Wheeler.
Really?
Cash Money Wheeler.
I like that.
Yeah, Dash Wilder. Cash. Cash and Dash.
I like that. Big fan of that. I'm putting them in lovely, lovely, lovely.
I thought you were going to go for the best.
No. And now, Horseman, Arn and Tully, the best.
Tully had his issues, didn't he? He wasn't around for too long.
Well, it's just sad timing, because like it felt like the Horsemen were, we're getting sort of momentum in the WWF, and all of a sudden, like, Arn and Tully came over in NWA, sorry. And then Arn and Tully came over, and they were just kind of they were great. They're a great tag team. As part of the Horsemen, they would have been the best. but I'm talking WWF Brainbusters. They were great unit, but it just lacked that little bit of punch that the Horsemen had.
Yeah.
Like, if you had gone all in and got Flair in and had Heenan there
tried.
as well. They really did. Like, we came buttock clenchingly close to having the Horsemen as part of WWF at this point. But alas and alack, great tag team. As you say, like the revival. The Vival, if you will.
But I'm just trying to think. Obviously, they won the tag team titles when they were there, but like the really standout WWF match for those two.
Oh,
I can't think off the top of my head. But then I know nothing.
There was quite a few they had. They had some crackers like the Hart Foundation. I know that much. There was. I'm sure I saw them mix it up with the Rockers as well. Bulldogs, not so much. I think they did.
And speaking of the Bulldogs, we have them now. We might as well move on to them.
Might as well.
They've got to go top. No.
Oh.
They're iconic. In the WWF as well, not just like Arn and Tully, who were outside, then came in, but weren't as good as they were when outside. These were. I know they were in Stampede and all that stuff, but they came in and they had Matilda. We're still speaking about Matilda. Bulldogs going in the Hall of Fame this year. Will Dynamite?
No. There's a lot of there's a lot of animosity. Well, sadly, Dynamite no longer with us. Tom Billington no longer with us. There's a lot of animosity. And if you ever read Pure Dynamite, the Tom Billington story, you will know why. Davey Boy Smith and Tom Billington weren't the best of friends. More so because Tom wasn't a big fan of Davey Boy.
Was Tom a fan of anybody?
He was.
He had that famous fight with a Rougeau.
He was a fan of Chris Benoit. But solid tag team. And I know there'll be people that'll be like, Brainbusters aren't above the Bulldogs, but I think the Bulldogs had a stronger WWF time
career,
than the Brainbusters did.
Then they had that match, didn't they? Who was it with when Tom got injured? He did his old neck on the ring. Was it his neck or something he did on the... He's just lay on the apron for ages, wasn't
there was. I have a feeling it might have been the Hart Foundation, but I'm sure you'll tell me in the comments if I'm wrong. There was a fate, like one of the more iconic Bulldogs stories is when Mick Foley was having a match at the WWF as an enhancement talent. And he got drilled with a clothesline from the Bulldogs that was so hard it broke his jaw.
For the first time.
Nearly got him done with the wrestles, but they were ones for delivering clotheslines. Were the lads, the Bulldogs? Great team, pop them in the best.
So next up we have the Brooklyn Brawler, who still does he still work for WWF? What am I saying?
I would assume he's a talent for life, but I haven't checked out what he's up to lately.
I'm sure I saw a documentary thing. I don't know if you can put him in anything but All Right. Because he was his role he was just there. He had so many different gimmicks over the years. He was just there to make other people look good. And he did a good job doing that. Otherwise, wouldn't have kept him coming back.
And it was during the 80s where like he probably got like the closest to a push when he was aligned with...
He had that one match, didn't he, for the title? Was it him? Am I getting somebody mixed up with somebody?
You are getting... There was an infamous match in 2000.
Horowitz had one as well, didn't he? With Shawn Michaels, I think.
Horowitz,
was that Brawler?
Barry Horowitz, the most famous match Barry Horowitz had, he's not on our list. It was with Skip from the Body Donners, Chris Candido. And Horowitz ended up like lasting 10 minutes against Skip, and it was like the ultimate jobber victory.
Yeah.
But Brawler was just one of those guys who just forever lost. He was in my house, the enhancement guys were always called the Wimpies. And he was the king of all the Wimpies. And
king of the ice creams.
Hence why he's made the list, and a lot of other of the Wimpies haven't. So lots of love for Brooklyn Brawler. Briefly became the Boston Brawler, but that was many years before. This is sort of the 80s when he was at his peak.
His peak? That's a thing to say. I'm sure I saw a thing on a documentary which said he just kept getting booked by WWF because no matter where they were, whatever time it was, he would make sure he'd get to an arena. If he had to pay his own car fare, had to pay his own airfare, anything like that, he would be there, he'd wrestle, he'd go home.
He was committed.
Just the opportunity, that's what kept him around for so long. So next up we have Brutus the Barber Beefcake, to quote Conrad Thompson.
We're going to pop him.
Steady, Tom, steady.
Where would you like to put him?
I would put him personally, but I wasn't alive in the 1980s, so this might be wrong. I would put him in Just About Bearable.
Okay, why would you put him in Just About Bearable?
Because I watch every single thing that Brutus does, whether it be him or the Booty Man, but we're speaking about this, just him. And while he did get massive pops, it did no for me.
No?
And he did obviously main event that. Was it SummerSlam? Against... Well, with Hogan.
He was in, that was the steel, the infamous, there was an infamous steel cage match, I know, against Zeus and Macho King.
Yeah.
But we're talking like Brutus Beefcake. I'm going to pop him in there for you. But
where would you go?
Well, I'd either put him either all right or just about bearable anyway. But we're talking like Brutus. This is Brutus kind of, he's just sort of finding his feet as the Barber. Like just coming out of the dream team with Greg Valentine. And was sort of embroiled in a feud that involved like Roddy Piper, or Jake the Snake, and Jake the Snake or Roddy Piper, with Adrian Adonis and Roddy Piper. There was a bit where he cut Adrian Adonis's hair, and that's kind of where the Barber shtick was born. But he was never particularly a grand performer.
No, he wasn't. No, I always used to just those massive pops he used to get back in the day used to really baffle me. Just did. So next up we have the Bushwhackers, who need to go in the best, don't they? Do they?
Oh, do you know what?
I think they do. I love the Bushwhackers, me.
I love the Bushwhackers.
How can you not smile when you're watching it? Yes, they would go around licking people, and that might not be
They
nice.
never won a thing. They never won a thing. But like in terms of, I'm going to put. Oh,
let's go. Look, we can't put them above.
I can't put them above the Brain Busters. I'll lose my Gary YouTube license.
To be fair, they are different horses for different courses.
They
aren't they?
certainly are. Yeah. They are not the same in terms of in-ring. So they debuted right at the tippity top of the 80s in '89. They'd spent time as the sheep herders elsewhere, which was a more hardcore version of what we got.
That's an understatement. I've seen one of their matches, and that is like
it's a bloodbath.
Terry Funk on crack.
It's ridiculous. So they had this. So when Vince called them and said, "Yeah, come and do the sheep herder thing, but can you tone it all the way down and just lick people's heads?" But yeah, like you say, different horses for different courses. As a kid, as a fan of wrestling, all that.
You do it, don't you?
All that.
And you go around licking strangers. It's a great time.
Not during this particular era, but like I think lovely.
Yeah.
Just for the comedy value, not based on wrestling acumen at all. Like they were very
just two
basic.
entertaining people who were so indeed, despite being horrible badass men. Let's just say that, in the wrestling sense, of course. Just endearing, weren't they? You just got behind them. It's the Bushwhackers. Silly
exactly.
I have no idea who this is, Tom.
This is the Natural Butch Reed, sir.
The Natural Bush Reed.
The Natural Butch Reed. I'm going to put in all right.
Does it say Trump on his bandana?
It says natural. I'm glad it doesn't say Trump. That'd be weird. Butch Reed spent a time in the WWF, but like a lot of people know him from stuff in WCW.
I've heard the name for sure.
He teamed with Ron Simmons. They were called Doom. They were managed by Teddy Long. They were phenomenal.
Famous picture with Teddy's little pencil moustache and two big lads behind him.
But Butch Reed, I'm being polite and putting him in all right because he didn't really jump through in the same way a lot of people did, like the Bushwhackers did or other people did during this time in the WWF. But I liked him. He was managed by Slick
Tom
for a bit.
him.
He's all right. Good wrestler.
Why is he all right if you liked him? Why is he all right?
He's all right. He was all right.
Just all right. Is that
all right? I didn't love him. I liked him. He was all right.
Didn't love him, but I liked him. So
I don't like it. Like there's wrestlers like Bigelow and Boss Man who I think offered more than Butch Reed did in this particular era. So that's why Butch Reed.
Why do you think he didn't hit the heights?
It's a funny one. Like there's a few guys during like that we'll go through who were great and had like a look, but for some reason didn't click. And I think that's wrestling. That's the WWF/WWE in general. Like you can have all the ability and stuff, but like sometimes if Vince doesn't like you, your career doesn't really touch the sides. Like in question, Corporal Kirchner, who I'm putting in the bin. Right.
I don't think I've ever seen a Corporal Kirchner match.
Not many. He was at WrestleMania 2. That was one I remember. In the ring because not a great wrestler and apparently a massive dick.
Why?
I've heard a lot of stories of people who just say he wasn't very nice to be around backstage. Just made a lot of trouble for people. Poor man Sergeant Slaughter.
Fair enough. So here comes the axe. Here comes the smasher. Papa from Papa. It's Demolition.
Demolition, who I am going to put in lovely. I like them. Now, you're disagreeing.
No, I was going to say I've got no. It's certainly one of the top 2 tiers, but I don't know which one. Because Demolition, for me, of all the iconic tag teams, they're not one of my favourites personally.
Okay.
I obviously liked the theme. Mm-hmm. Liked it when they brought in Crush.
I liked it when Crush turned up.
But the whole look of it never. Yes, they were going for their version of the Road Warriors.
Yes.
Yes, of course, that's what they were going for. But it never really. Don't know about you.
But that's exactly what you said is exactly true. At this point, they didn't have the Road Warriors as part of the WWF, so there's a couple of tag teams that you'll see, which are basically they kind of had this whole department, which was failed attempts to make their own Road Warriors, and we'll get to some of them. Demolition being one of the more, one of the ones that punched through more than the others did.
They certainly had a great deal of success, didn't they?
They did all right. And it gave Crush his first outing in the WWF as well.
The longest reigning tag champions all the way through until the concussion lawsuit came along and the New Day took their reign. Just a pure coincidence. Pure coincidence.
What are the odds of that happening? What are the chances of that happening?
So next up we have Dino Bravo, who...
No, this is the Rock Don Morocco.
I always get those two mixed up.
Yeah, easy. One's got blonde hair and one hasn't. The Rock Don Morocco, who I'm going to pop in all right.
His success must have been earlier on than this period we're talking about here.
He had success in other places. He had a great look. Vince really liked him. He had this European appeal to him that Vince was a fan of. Could barely talk. They would put him with Bruno Sammartino. Not Bruno Sammartino. What am I talking about? Talking out of my bottom. Superstar Billy Graham would become his manager, like sort of WrestleMania 4 onwards, and they'd try and sort of attach the rocket to Don Morocco near the end of the 80s, but it never truly lit.
Was he a Continental Champion? Does that ring a bell?
I don't actually remember if he was or not. I have a funny feeling he might have been many years before, but like in this particular time, didn't really touch the sides.
See, here we have next up classy Freddie Blassie.
Now,
I can't picture him being around for that long in WWF in the 80s.
He managed the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov.
I remember those
at
days,
WrestleMania.
yeah.
So he wasn't around massively. So I put him in because like he was certainly a part of the WWF in the 80s. He obviously had his big in-ring success much before this, but he was a voice of a tag team in this particular era. But then he became he did other things with the WWF. He kind of became their elder statesman for a while.
He was the best voiceover man they ever had.
Oh,
those Attitude Era promos. Oof. But he was, I was also managing, I think it was Hogan's first ever match. He was his manager.
He was indeed, post Terry Boulder, Hulk Hogan's manager. And it was a beautiful combination. So he did do he had a little bit of a manager acumen at this point in the WWF, but his true time had kind of come and gone by this point because he'd done a lot of stuff in the late 70s, early 80s as well. But chucked him in anyway. Wanted to give some love to classy Freddie Blassie.
I mean, it would be wrong if we put him anything lower than lovely, lovely, lovely.
Yeah, exactly.
But we put him there because of tenure, I guess, in this era we're talking about right now. So next up we have Mean Gene Okerlund. Say no more. The best man to ever do his role. Yeah. That's the thing. You watch Mean Gene do his stuff and it baffles you why they make the backstage interviewers of today be so lifeless, and everyone's the same, and everyone acts the same. If you're a good guy, you get a smile and a longing look when they walk off the camera. If you're a heel, you get a frown when they walk off the camera. And he would react to what was being said to him, and he'd question everything they would do, and it just makes you wonder.
There is this weird thing at the moment that I sense as a wrestling fan, which I've never sensed before, which is the sense that WWE are not essentially trying to create characters, or they're not trying to create stars either. They're just... The WWE is a brand, and they're selling, come to the WWE, as opposed to let's sell. Because, I mean, historically, and the Ruthless Aggression era documentary they've got highlights this, sometimes they make stars so well that the stars bugger off and leave them high and dry. So there is, and this is only my opinion, I get this vibe that they are very reluctant to really make a big household name. So they like to kind of keep everything under the WWE umbrella, which is kind of why you have got this sort of one-size-fits-all style for a lot of things like backstage interviewers. But Gene Okerlund was a class unto himself. He was able to help tell a story, to move a story along. He had a great way backstage and he was just part of so many key moments backstage. You know, it was him backstage with Hulk Hogan the night Hogan beat the Iron Sheik for the WWF Championship, and there's champagne being poured everywhere, and Gene's there with the mic getting the moment. It's just great. Big love for Gene. I never thought Gene Okerlund was a great commentator, But as a backstage announcer, he was a tremendous,
That's what I'm judging him on.
person.
I don't remember Mean Gene as the commentator.
He did some. They used him a couple of times as a commentator. He even was Hogan's tag team partner on one occasion.
Those promo packages are bloody lovely, aren't they?
Yeah.
When Hogan's training him up for his wrestling match.
Oh, it's beautiful.
So next up we have George the Animal Steel. Turnbuckles run away. It's just a shame that most of these lads, well not most, some of these lads are no longer with us, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, George Steele was somebody who had a lot of success early before this era of the WWF, but was just kind of there as it was coming to an end.
I think you're going to go lovely, 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 mate.
Yeah, I was going to, but I slipped. But he had a big moment at WrestleMania 2 when he faced Macho Man for the Intercontinental title. That's kind of one of the key moments, like in this era. Like he was a big part of that. And every time he chewed up a turnbuckle, he would always get matted up in his hairy chest. It was always a bit of a strange visual.
That's what the 80s sort of did better than most eras. When you look back at this roster here, it's just the sort of endearing weirdo. Bushwhackers, George the Animal. Who else is on there as an endearing weirdo?
Endeared,
Akeem is an endearing weirdo. You know what I mean? They did that better than most eras, I feel.
We got some wonderful endearing weirdos to come. We really
Not more
have.
so than Greg the Hammer Valentine.
Well.
Obviously, I didn't see Greg the Hammer Valentine at his best. He was just always there, and his hair was always fantastic. His hair is still fantastic to this day. Saw him in Las Vegas last year.
Oh, did you?
I almost gave him a sniff.
Ooh.
What conditioner do you use, Greg?
Get you. I'm going to put Greg in all right.
Rhythm and Blues was a thing around this time.
He did a bit of stuff with Rhythm and Blues and the Honky Tonk Man. He did indeed. There was a very memorable feud that he had with whose name escapes me now. It was a very memorable feud with a guy with blonde spiky hair whose name's for
Scotty
now.
Too Hotty.
Scotty Too Hotty. It was. Oh, it's going to really annoy me now.
Blonde spiky hair.
Yeah, blonde spiky hair. For some reason, I've missed him off this list. I feel like I should have put him on. But
Terry.
It wasn't Terry. I'm breaking up. Go, Ronnie Garvin.
Ronnie Garvin. That's
There
the
you
one.
go.
Terry Garvin.
Rubbish,
YouTube.
Rubbish Ronnie Garbage. Rugged Ronnie Garvin. They had a phenomenal feud in which, Greg Valentine's finish was the figure four. And Ronnie Garvin found a way to counter it by wearing a leg brace that he called, and I've always loved this, the Hammer Jammer. Because he had this leg brace on, so when Greg applied the figure four, you've got Ronnie Garvin doing this. It's not hurting, mate, because that's how wrestling works. And there was a point where Ronnie Garvin he lost his job and he lost a match to Valentine. And so Garvin was just taking other jobs within the WWF. One of them was a ring announcer. And then as Greg Valentine's entering, Ronnie's announcing him going, "Here comes, look at the state of this guy here. Stupid hair and old face." It was just beautiful. Ronnie's not in this list, but pretend I put him in the best. And Greg's all right. Greg also had I'm putting Greg just above Brutus as the workhorse of the Dream Team. He was a former WWF tag team champs from sort of the mid-80s time.
So next up we have Hacksaw, and it's at least lovely, if not higher.
Now, Jim had some questionable...
like the weed.
He did. He was a big fan of a little bit of a whoop-a-ba. But also backstage, he was one of Hogan's buddies, so he didn't lose very often.
I didn't realise he had that asterisk next to his name. I thought he was just so popular. That's why he was up there.
There was a bit of that, but there was also a bit of like he became he was very popular without a shadow of a doubt. But if you watch, he very rarely loses.
Yeah.
Like so many matches on pay-per-view, a double count out. Because Duggan is just like, same thing happened when he went to WCW, and he was like, Hogan brought him in, and he just became like this unstoppable monster in WCW, which is hilarious.
I think I heard Bruce Pritchard, I think it was an episode about Hacksaw, and he was on about how it was almost time for him to give him the big one, but then he got done for the weed stuff, and that was like, oh, they're backing away from that, which is weird for the 80s when you think back.
Well, no, because the thing is, right, the big thing with that story was it was Jim Duggan and the Iron Sheik who
in
were,
a car
who were
together,
pulled over
and they broke
hotboxing.
kayfabe.
That was the big issue.
Yes.
Because at this point in wrestling, your faces and your heels all travelled separately. So they weren't so much annoyed with the fact they were hotboxing while driving down the interstate. They were more annoyed that they were a babyface and heel hanging out together.
Yeah.
It broke kayfabe. That was part of the reason why they were punished quite heavily. Like, you broke the unwritten rules.
Before they were meant to be broken. So next up we have King Haku. Who, one of the Heenan family, of course.
Indeed.
He's got to go. It's one of the upper echelons, isn't it?
I'm putting him in lovely.
I love Haku, me.
Haku was great. Like, Haku and Andre were a tag team for a while.
That's a scary tag team.
It is. It was more the fact that Andre was so cream crackered that Haku was just there to do the heavy lifting. And Andre just came in and would just go, "Bah!" and tag back out
He's
again.
bloody Andre the Giant, isn't he? He can do what he wants.
But Haku, later on, has this incredible rep as just this monster, and there are some fantastic stories about Haku just causing ruckus everywhere he goes. It's funny how we'll talk about someone like Corporal Kirchner, who was just had a bad attitude and would just be a dick to many people, but yet Haku is just like, it's fine. They probably deserved it. It's Haku. It's all right.
Yeah, but he must have stood up for the good.
Yeah.
He was always, every story you hear, it always seems to be him backing up a wrestler. The boys and all that mentality.
He very much protected wrestling. I think there was a story where he was at an airport and there was a bunch of soldiers talking about, there's some fake wrestlers over there, and Haku went over and like, you what, mate? Got something to say? Like Haku just standing up to some soldiers.
Imagine being a soldier and not knowing.
Google Haku stories.
Yeah.
If you've got some time kicking around the house.
Yeah. All day. So next up we have Harley Race, and the only thing I'm remembering from this run for him was the King stuff.
It was indeed. Now,
his best days were behind him.
I'm gonna right. Harley Race in NWA would be the best. In WWF at this point, he's all right. Harley came into WWF. It was a big signing for Vince McMahon to bring in Harley. It was kind of one of those moves that was sort of done to potentially damage the NWA to bring him over to the side. He became King Harley Race. There was a point where the King of the Ring wasn't televised. And Harley Race was one of those kings before the King of the Ring was a pay-per-view. And that's where the king thing came from. And he came out on the throne and the robe and all that stuff.
There's a story about why Vince wanted to make him a king, though, isn't there? And I can't remember what it was off the top of my head.
I think he just felt like it suited him.
Yeah,
was looked quite regal.
That? Yeah.
So Vince McMahon can be quite simple like that. It was, I think it was Connor from The Ascension who was in a meeting with Vince McMahon. That was it. And Vince was like, "You look like a rat. Can you talk nasally? You're going to be a rat." And Harley, and like Harley's best days, as you said, were behind him by the time he came to the WWF. He got some nice paydays out of it. But he was feuding with Duggan and Haku. But he was a shadow of himself. But again, if we were doing NWA in the 80s, he'd be at the top, putting the whole bounty up against Ric Flair. Those promos where he just stared dead down the camera and go, "I am the greatest wrestler alive today."
I love that.
Amazing. But like, this wasn't the same Harley.
No.
That's why we're putting him in all right.
So next up we have the Hart Foundation, who, what do you say?
I'm putting them up there.
Of course you are. It's
Solid
the Hart
tag-
Foundation.
Even in their embryotic stage as a tag team, they were great. There was something there. You kind of knew that Brett was going to be a thing. There was part of your waters where you knew that Brett would probably be a thing.
Yeah, there was just so, two opposites attracting and make a fantastic team. You had Jim cackling, big bruising man, did all the power stuff, and then Brett was the quiet one, the hit man, did all of the nuanced technical wrestling stuff. You put that together and you have a heart attack.
Hart Foundation and the Rockers fighting, which is crazy when you think that there are two people out amongst these four that would change the industry in a decade to come.
Yeah.
I love that sort of stuff. Easy choice, they're in the top.
Hillbilly Jim.
Oh, don't go messing with
a country boy, country boy, country boy. Don't go messing with
Do you, Billy? Beautiful. Beautiful. Lovely.
Just like a triangle.
He had a pally friendship with Hulk Hogan, and there was a Hogan hillbilly team that was burgeoning around the early to mid 80s that I loved. Hillbilly Jim never won a belt.
No.
Never needed to. He was a very cool guy.
Again, it's another weirdo, an endearing weirdo.
Endearing weirdo.
Not saying that if you're a hillbilly watching, that you're a weirdo. You know what I mean? Just a bit outside the box, but you love them all the same.
And he was part of the. He was kind of part of the rock and wrestling movement. He was on Hulk Hogan's Rock and Wrestling, the cartoon series. He was immortalised in animation. Was our boy here?
Yeah, he was. I think I saw a shoot interview with him when he was speaking about how much money he used to make from merchandise alone. There was a number mentioned. I can't remember what it was, but I remember sitting there watching it thinking, wow, that's a big number.
He does all right. He does all right.
So next up we have the second greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time behind The Miz, because Chris Jericho doesn't exist anymore, right? The honky tonk man.
I want to put him in lovely, lovely, lovely.
I might suggest, just because everyone... What type of heat did he have as a man who knows more than me about the 80s?
Oh, that's a really good shout.
Was it heat, or was it sort of Baron Corbin heat?
I don't think it was as bad as Corbin heat. I think it was one of those things where everybody knew that he wasn't as great a wrestler as he made out to be, but he was the Intercontinental Champion.
He's a man who dressed up as Elvis, though. That was the gimmick.
That was it, yeah. I think it was very much by accident that he became the longest running champion. It just they just kept it ticking over for the longest of times. Let's put him in. Just for look.
You got to think about the Warrior match as well. It helped make Warrior, didn't it?
That was I think that's the night that Warrior was very much on the map that night. It was SummerSlam, wasn't it? It was SummerSlam where it was meant to be Brutus Beefcake. Beefcake was injured.
Oh, he did that thing on the beach, didn't he?
Sailing accident. Oh no, that was later. This was a different accident.
Was it on the parachute thingies and someone flew into him or something and
I'm sure that
ruined his face?
I'm sure it was a later one. I'm sure he had 2 accidents.
Bloody hell!
I'm sure Brutus had 2.
Maybe we should move him up.
Nah. Yeah, that was it. So that was a big night for the Warrior becoming the IC champion that night. And Honky in sort of the late 80s was burgeoning, so let's pop him there.
Finkel.
Easy. Right up here. I've got a big affinity for Howard Finkel.
I love Howard Finkel. Best ever. Hogan. Best ever. We wouldn't be sat... you say what you want. We wouldn't be sat here without that man, would we?
I genuinely, and I know there'll be people go, oh, okay, sure. Unsubscribe. Hogan, you said the best.
You can't not, man.
It's just...
He was wrestling in the 80s.
He was wrestling. He was a game... If not Hogan, who would have been that guy?
In the 80s?
In the 80s.
Are we pretending Hogan didn't exist?
What if Hogan didn't exist?
Hacksaw?
Oof.
That's Old American Boy? 2x4s?
It might have been Duggan. But Hogan came along at the right time. Hogan, we wouldn't be sat here. I wouldn't be sat here if it wasn't for Hogan. When I was a kid, I was a Hulkamaniac. No. I was Hulk Hogan was my guy. I cried my eyes out after WrestleMania 6 when he lost the Ultimate Warrior.
What year were you born?
1984.
Wow.
I know, right?
By about 1990, that was peak Hulkamania.
Yeah, I was.
Was it peak Hulkamania?
It was
for you anyway.
It was for me. It was because I was 6 when he lost to the Warrior.
He was winning back-to-back Rumbles when you were becoming conscious about what was going on in the world.
Well, how could you not love him?
Yeah.
He was just the top guy, best guy. And there he is. So therefore, and it was his win against the Iron Sheik in the mid-80s. Hulkamania is here, said Gorilla Monsoon. And that became a thing. That became a moment. And speaking of,
the devil. With his Twitter game, he has no clue that he does.
No, that wasn't. I'm just moving him up. He's not just about bearable. Sheiky baby.
You've got to. It's at least the top 2, but it's just how high? Because would Hulkamania have been a thing without the Sheik? That's the big question.
I think he would have beaten somebody else.
Yeah.
Gonna put me lovely, and then we'll have a fight about it later. But Iron Sheik, yeah, as you say, Iron Sheik was the guy that was the one that started Hulkamania, and he'll tell you that forever. Iron Sheik becoming the champion was very much the end of an era, and Hogan was the beginning of another, because it was Iron Sheik putting that camel clutch on Bob Backlund that took Backlund out of the game. That's probably why we've not really put Backlund in this list, because Backlund's time was kind of done by sort of the early 80s.
After his 7-year reign.
After his 7-year reign as champion, Arnold Skaaland throwing the towel in for Backlund. as the Iron Sheik wrenched back on that camel clutch was what finished it off. Sheiky Baby never moved that well. Like, he teamed with Nikolai Volkov for a bit.
Why didn't have to?
When Volkov is doing the heavy lifting, there's a problem.
He was speaking nonsense. He had his lovely fancy boots. He had the camel clutch, which sometimes made him erect. That's all you need when you've got the Iron Sheik.
Okay, Jake the Snake Roberts.
Oh, the best. Still is today, as we saw on Dynamite a few weeks ago.
Oh.
Depending on when this goes live. Unbelievable. It's that the chalk and cheese nature of what he did. Everyone is shouting. Then you got to him, and he had to sit a little bit close to the television because he was being all quiet and sitting, I'm going to kill you.
He didn't need it. Was it a wise man doesn't shout, he whispers and everybody listens. Jake Roberts, in this particular era, was a very cool icon. Came out with Alice Cooper at WrestleMania. Faced Andre the Giant at WrestleMania as well. Never won a belt, never needed to.
Another one of them, like Piper as well. That's a big. We'll get on that debate later on, I guess.
I think we certainly will.
But why did he leave and come back again?
He was.
Because I remember my first dive into wrestling was that WCW VHS about Sting's career and Goldberg's career. And there was a big thing about Sting versus Jake the Snake, and Jim Ross is on commentary, and Jake the Snake's wearing the coal miner's glove thing, and he's got the snake, then the snake turns on Jake and bites Jake, and that allows Sting to win.
He left WWF because he asked what his position was on the show, and he was told by Vince that Vince sees him as the number 5 babyface, and Jake was like, nah, I'm not a number 5 babyface. I'm better than that. He was made an offer to come to the WCW by a friend of his who was there. I can't remember their name, but it's crucial because he was made an offer.
Dave the Rabbit.
Dave the Rabbit.
There you go.
Made him an offer, made him a big money contract to come over and be a top guy. The day that Jake turned up, his mate got sacked. Bill Watts was in. Watts hates Jake, and he went, you're not getting that money, you silly bean. Oh, what a time it was. So Jake left, and it all went a bit weird from there. But at this point, he just had something different about him. Like, I always felt like a Hogan and Jake feud would have been really cool.
Why did that never happen?
Again, it was because he was seen as a number 5 babyface. He was sort of pigeonholed.
That would have done for a Stomping Grounds pay-per-view in 1988.
That'd have been amazing.
Kick ass and take names.
Definitely happened.
So next up we have Jesse.
Oh, no.
The Body. Ventura.
Jesse on comms.
Yeah, on commentary.
So this is commentary Jesse Ventura, who I think is the best. Jesse was one of the first commentators who I really like. The reason I loved him, reason why he stood out to me, like Bobby was a bit of a blag artist, and that's why we loved him. Like, he'd always be like, oh, that ref had something in his eye. That's why he didn't see those 37 chair shots. But where Jesse Ventura would always speak the truth in when he commentated. And I loved that because everything that, like, Jesse would go, well, he's cheating for doing this, and like he's doing that because of this. Everything that Jesse said was true, and the best heels in wrestling completely have complete reasoning behind what they're doing.
Yeah.
I hate it when a heel will go, I'm not going to give you an explanation for why I hit Dave the Rabbit. Just did. And I love the fact that Jesse was on commentary able to add like justification and reasoning to the heels, and even come at the faces for different things. Like if Hogan would rake the eyes, Ventura would call him out on it and go, hang on, you. And he would also take it to Gorilla Monsoon, who by the way is not here, but he's the best.
Yeah.
Gorilla would he'd be coming at Gino and saying like, hey, look, you say, hey, when this guy does an eye rake, you come at him. When Hogan does it, it's fine. That's not the case at all. Jesse was brilliant.
So when did McMahon and him start doing things together?
They were doing stuff in the 80s.
It was in the 80s as well?
Yeah, they were doing stuff in the 80s. I think then Gorilla and Ventura did stuff, and then obviously it would move into Gorilla and Heenan. When Jesse went to WCW, there was some lawsuit stuff that would come later on. But Jesse's there, as is...
The mouth of the pissing South.
We've got to pop him there. Let me tell you something, baby!
It's miraculous how his hair's still the same colour today, isn't it? Miraculous.
Very talented man. Was involved with a lot of making music.
Yeah, all the themes.
The Pile Driver album may not have happened without Jimmy Hart. Do seek out the Pile Driver album. It's very special.
I think that's how Jerry Lawler first became aware with him, because Jimmy was in a band that Jerry heard or something. Then they became involved together. Something like that, Tom.
That was
the
off
the top of my head.
Thing happened in Memphis.
Yeah.
That was probably how it happened. But Jimmy, very much like Bobby and the Heenan family, Jimmy would be that guy that could add a little bit of depth and a bit of gravitas to tag teams, to singles wrestlers, and the Glamour Girls when they needed something a little bit extra. Lord knows the Glamour Girls needed it. But forever a fan of Jimmy Hart's work. Him and the Honky Tonk Man always made beautiful music together as well. Just this fluorescent sick on top of these people that just caught your eye every single time.
Lovely collection of jackets as well.
Mm-hmm.
Who we got next, Tom?
The Jumping Bomb Angels.
The original, well, one of the original women's tag team champions that they never tell you about for some reason.
There was a women's tag division back in the 80s.
These had the titles, didn't they?
They certainly did.
Yeah.
It was the Jumping Bomb Angels. They were on the first Survivor Series, and it was kind of one of those things where they were added as a team, and then they got amongst it with the Glamour Girls and with Sherri Martel and all of that, and everybody just went, "Oh my God, these guys are amazing!"
Yeah.
Like they were pulling out like high flying moves that you wouldn't see in American wrestling for many years to come. They were pioneers. I'd love to sit here and tell you so much more I know about them, but unfortunately I don't know enough about them. But what I do know...
That's all right, Tom.
Yeah,
That's all right,
but what I do know is that they were very much part of, as you say, a very hitherto untalked about previous women's tag team title division.
Why did they do that? I never understood that.
Well, why did they do a women's tag title division? I'm baffled because the singles women's division was so flaky for the WWF for like now in the last 4 or 5 years, probably a bit longer, like the women's division in the WWE has been incredibly strong, and I know it's not without its problems, but like in the 80s and in the 90s they just kept starting and stopping it.
There was 2 wrestlers, wasn't there?
Dropping it.
Went away, yeah, and then came back again. But I meant, why did it never reference the old women's, like your Jumping Bomb Angels that held the original women's tag team championships? 'Cause it was always the first ever women's tag team champions when they brought them in. I never understood that.
It's frustrating. I think they get round it. By saying they are the first WWE Women's Tag Team Champions. Well, they are.
With the F, were they?
Because they're the WWE. I think sometimes they've got around it that way by saying they're the first WWE Women's Tag Team Champions. Well, yes, because there wasn't an E at this point. I see what you're doing. So
next up we have the Junkyard Dog.
The JYD.
Am I got this right in thinking he had a lot more success outside of WWF before he got there?
He had quite a bit before then. Pop him there. Or do I put him in the top? He was
universally popular, wasn't he?
He was. I'm going to put him in the best. I don't think he was never going to be the greatest of wrestlers, but he had a popularity, big part of the first ever WWF pay-per-view, the Wrestling Classic. Winner gets a car. What a time!
What car was it?
It was a nice fancy car.
Oh wow!
A Vauxhall Disappointment. JYD again, like a popular star of this era, and as you say, he would still do more. Like I seem to remember seeing him. Like he would go on to WCW and he'd have matches for the WCW title at like Clash of the Champions and things like that. So he would have more success in NWA and WCW than he would in WWF. There was very much it wasn't as big, but he was beloved. He was one of Hogan's guys. They got on. It was one of them. Happy with that.
And then we have big old bloody Ken Patera.
Ken Patera.
Who I want to run through the list of facts I know about Ken Patera.
Hit me with some Patera pointers.
Patera pointer number 1 and only. He was very strong.
He was a strong man. He was a very strong man.
I'm painted.
He was Olympic strongman.
He was.
All right. Didn't do a massive amount in the grand scheme of things in the WWF.
See, when I hear his name, I think he's been there for years. Like, he was there for years, wasn't he?
He was there for a long time.
He just did nothing.
There was a story where he robbed a shop.
Do you know any more about this shop?
Smashed
Bottle of Frosty Jacks?
Threw a brick through a window, tried to rob the place.
Oh, was that the diner?
Yeah.
Yes, I've heard that one.
Cheers, Ken. Killer bees! Oh, you know what? The original Twin Magic. I'm going to put them in. Oh, I'm going to put them in lovely, lovely, lovely. Like the Killer Bees.
I've only ever seen one match with them involved, I think. Was it an early Survivor Series?
It was a Survivor.
It had like 20 million teams around the ring.
It was the first Survivor Series, and it was that multi-tag team cluster featuring the Killer Bees. More often than not, you'll see Jumping Jim Brunzell on WWE documentaries as a talking head. He does a lot of stuff like that. Good fun as a tag team. They put the masks on, the ref couldn't tell the difference. What a time.
They do look quite similar in that picture. King Kong Bundy.
Now, 80s Bundy. Lovely, lovely, lovely.
Main eventer.
Absolute beast. WrestleMania 2 main eventer. Him and Hogan in the steel cage. It was before Andre did the ultimate turn.
I'm sorry.
All right. Tell the 5 story.
5. I just wanted people to count to 5 instead of 3. Because he was that bloody good.
Big E nicked that.
Ah, he did.
You'd make you count to 5 when he splashed them. But it was like before Andre turned and became the ultimate baddie, that King Kong Bundy felt like the first threat to Hulk Hogan's title, first legit threat. You know, him and Future reference we'll get to in a bit were the real threats to Hogan. And Bundy in the cage, it felt like a big deal. He wouldn't capture the same success. Like the following year, he would be in a 6-man tag. Featuring some smaller wrestlers. It was Bundy and Jim teaming with midget wrestlers. Weird time. Press F for Lord Littlebrook, who got a terrible time that night, thanks to Bundy. But there you go. Big love to Bundy. Lovely, lovely, lovely.
He was surprisingly young. That's the main thing that struck me when he obviously was it last year he passed away?
He looks he looks older than he actually is, doesn't he?
Really does. But Coco Beware is up next. A man with a bloody parrot. Another weirdo who you just can't help but love.
When I was a kid, I loved Coco Beware. I loved Coco Beware.
Why, Tom?
He was a big, colourful character, and he had a bird.
Yeah, he used to do that.
Parrot called Frankie. Birdman's in town. An incredibly catchy theme.
I only ever saw him and Owen as High Energy. That's the only time I ever saw.
They were good fun as High Energy.
Yeah, they were.
Owen was always capable of more, and he would go on to become more. But I liked him.
Benny's still at every convention today. Coco Beware.
Oh, you'll always
with a version of Frankie.
Yeah, because the original one died many years ago. Yeah. So it's Frankie Jr. or something.
And here we have the biological father of that ginger lady I've forgotten the name of already. Girls just want to have fun. Cyndi Lauper.
Right. I'm putting Lou in the best. I'm going to explain why Lou Albano is in the best. I believe in a previous list in commentators I didn't put him in the best, but there's a reason why I'm putting him in the best for the ages. Lou Albano was a very key part of the rock and wrestling era.
He gave birth to Cyndi Lauper.
Played Cyndi Lauper's dad in Girls Just Want to Have Fun, so he was kind of like the conduit for bringing Cyndi Lauper. That's a great Lou Albano impression.
Thank you.
He was a conduit in bringing Cyndi Lauper into the WWF, which gave so much crossover appeal. The War to Settle the Score on MTV was born from that kind of appeal. And for the love of God, the man was Super Mario.
Was he?
He was Super Mario. The Super Mario Brothers Super Show was the cartoon of the video game, and they had live action scenes.
Right.
And based on the success of the rock and wrestling cartoon and the popularity of wrestling, Lou Albano was cast to be Mario. So in the live action scenes
Wasn't he an older man at this point?
He was perfect to play Mario.
Was he?
Honest to God, he was Mario.
I'm going to have to see this with
He
my own eyes.
was Mario. You must watch it. It's brilliant. It's a great program, and Lou Albano is just Mario. But because he had a foot in with the entertainment world now, he had also had one foot in the wrestling camp. So in these episodes of Super Mario Brothers Super Show where they had the live action bits, it would star wrestlers randomly. There was a story on the one bit where, because they'd have the cartoon in the middle that was based on the video game, and it would be Mario and Luigi and the princess and all that doing stuff. But then you'd have a bookend of like a live action bit where it was Mario and Luigi's plumbing company. And there was one episode where Mario was trying to find Roddy Piper's bagpipes because he'd sent them in to be repaired, and Luigi was like, I can't find them, Mario, but hey, I found some odd parts to fix our vacuum cleaner, and he'd used the bagpipes to fix the vacuum cleaner. Doorbell, there's Piper at the door. He's livid. There was an episode with Sergeant Slaughter in as well. Like, it was just funny to watch the wrestlers popping up on Mario. And Lou Albano was the conduit for all of that. So got lots of love for Captain Lou Albano.
Now we have a man who I feel terribly sorry for in the grand scheme of things. We have Marty Jannetty.
Well, we're putting Marty Jannetty in with Shawn Michaels, aren't we? So
as the Rockers.
As the Rockers. So what we'll do is we'll move away from him and we'll just hoy the...
Oh, right. We're just going to disregard that picture.
We're going to disregard that because I want to put tag teams in together. Like Bret Hart went in with Jim Neidhart. Axe went in with Smash. I know Axe should be higher. But we're going to put the Rockers in together. So I'll tell you what then. Let's move away from Marty. Let's pop the Rockers in right now.
The Rockers have got to be in lovely, lovely, lovely.
I want to put the Rockers in...
They were just a bit bland to be in the best, were they not? Just a bit bland.
I'll put them in lovely, lovely, lovely.
They were young. It was for the girls, weren't they? Woohoo! There was 2 sexy men. Yeah.
There was a moment where the Rockers became the WWF Tag Team Champions and lost the belts before the episode aired. It's a very weird time. So basically, the Rockers had a match against the Hart Foundation where the rope broke. Mm-hmm. And they did the match anyway, but Vince wasn't happy. Can't have that match air. And the following, tell me if I'm boring you.
No, I'm not. Sorry.
And then they redid the match, won the belts. But then before that episode aired, they'd already, because they recorded in weird sync, I believe it was Marty that got injured, so they had to get the belts off them. So they recorded a match where Marty got attacked from behind. And they lost the titles. So they're one of these weird tag teams as a result of, I think only the Steiners did this as well. Like one of the very few tag teams who, as a result of TV taping order, lost the belts before they'd won them. But they were, like you say, they were there for the girls. They were the blueprint for like the Young Bucks, teams like that. And when they got in there with the Hart Foundation, it was always magic. But Hart Foundation were a better team all around.
I just might say as well, we have to do a cheap plug. You might be wondering why the hell Tom knows so damn much.
I'm old
about the 1980s. You do the Cultaholic things on the podcast feed.
We do lots about older wrestling stuff. Yeah, I do. So we do like documentaries and stuff on older wrestling, which pop up on the odd occasion. We do the Cultaholic Classic Raw review, myself and Justin Henry, where we're watching every episode of Raw from the very beginning. So we're kind of in the new generation era. More on that in another teen video. And I do the SmackDown review with Matthew Gregg, where we watch every episode of SmackDown. These are all on the Cultaholic podcast feed, the one where you watch the Cultaholic Wrestling podcast on. If you like a lot of wrestling. You see other stuff popping up, that's me ruining your day. But so I
wish I had your memory.
You say that, but you wait and see how many of these stories I've completely got wrong.
Imagine that.
I'm making all this.
There the entire time.
Making all this up. So Ted DiBiase, he was a sheep farmer originally from Denver. Talking of Ted, here he is. Pop him up there.
He's iconic. The stuff when he would make fans get in the ring and degrade them. Rob Van Dam, of course, one of the most famous examples, kissing his foot. What did we have? That wasn't $1 Million title. That was in mid-90s. That wasn't it?
No. He would create the $1 Million Championship. When would he create it? Ooh, I have a feeling it was just before the 90s.
Was it?
Just before the start of the 90s.
Really?
I think because he definitely didn't have it at WrestleMania 4. He may have very well had it at 5. The whole thing with the $1 Million title was that he felt snubbed by Jack Tunney that he hadn't won the belt. So he went, you know what? I'm going to get my own belt, and it's going to be better than the WWF belt. So about worthy of a man of my standing. So we have these vignettes of him going to a jeweler's to get this belt specially made. It was beautiful. But Ted was just a perfect, like, aristocratic heel, like the man who tried to buy the WWF Championship.
He was Vince McMahon in kayfabe.
A lot of these characters are Vince, just living vicariously through them. But I was a big fan of Ted.
Have you ever heard the rumours that Vince would give him like a purse every month on top of his wage to go out and be the $1 Million Man in public?
I hadn't heard that, but it is very much in keeping with.
I'm sure I've read somewhere. I've got no idea if it's true or not, so if it's not, please don't hurt me. It was like 10 or 15 grand a month you would get to just go and be the $1 Million Man, because obviously kayfabe was very much more important than it is now. Imagine $1 Million Man on Twitter in 1988. Here I am with my good pal, I don't know, pick his main rival at the time. Anyway.
He wouldn't have got on with IRS.
No.
Not at that point. Yeah, big love.
Miss Elizabeth, right?
Oh, no.
I don't know what it is about Miss Elizabeth. She didn't have to say a single word, but you just think, oh.
She's just as well because she had zero charisma.
No, but it's Liz, isn't it? Good old Liz.
We're putting Liz
Bloody
up there,
Liz.
aren't we? Liz, who was the woman that tore the Mega Powers apart.
It wasn't. It was Hogan. He fancied her.
Tore the Mega Powers apart at WrestleMania 5. And well, 4 it was the night that Savage became the WWF champion. And then at 5, the Mega Powers exploded. One was, hang on, let me just check. 85 was 1, 86 was 2, 87 was 3. 88 was 4, 89 was 5. We're good. Just checking. I was just checking the years. So the Mega Powers explode, and it was a result of the love of Liz. It was a funny one with Liz because Savage was really protective of Liz. Like
In and out of kayfabe.
In and out of kayfabe. He was very protective of her. Like there were stories about how Liz would have her own locker room that Savage would put her in to keep her away from the boys. So the Hogan and Savage story that dominated like WrestleMania 4 through 5 was kind of a little bit art imitating life, and how protective he was and how paranoid she made him. But when you talk about like great female managers, you talk about Miss Elizabeth. That moment at SummerSlam.
I was about to say the moment where they reconcile and everyone's in the crowd crying. And
Oh
stuff.
no, that's WrestleMania 7.
Is that WrestleMania?
I'm talking about the first SummerSlam where she whipped her skirt off.
Oh, she whipped it off and revealed the little red number.
She did a Cheryl Baker from Bugs Fizz.
I'm making your mind up.
Oh my days, that holds up now.
Sorry, I thought when they got married it was at SummerSlam, was it not?
It was indeed. It was SummerSlam 92. Ooh, it was in the 90s. Match made in heaven and a match made in hell.
Yeah.
But that was a beautiful moment. And it was a wedding that went really well up until the end when
Undertaker and
Jake turned
Snake,
up
yeah.
without an invite.
Yeah, a snake in a box.
Could have been worse.
Like a pole. Mr. Fuji.
Oh, Fuge. Right, I'm putting Fuge in all right.
Oh, wow. Is that not harsh?
Right.
Why?
Oh, actually, I don't know. I
Why?
feel like...
He was a bastard, but in the best possible way.
I'll put him in lovely. Only because it's like... Actually, do you know what? I'm going to put him in all right if/when we sit down to do the New Generation era, because in the 90s he was useless. He was Yoko's manager, but then he could barely speak English. So they had to bring in Jim Cornette to be Fuji's manager, to be Yokozuna's manager. So he added, but then like at this point, he wasn't like, if we were doing like tiered list of 80s managers, like he's not up there with the Heenan and the Hart.
No.
And all that. So we'll leave him in lovely. Managed the, he managed a handful of teams. He managed the Powers of Pain.
He was everywhere.
War on the Barbarian.
I'm more thinking lovely because you hear all these stories of what he did backstage and what he did when on the road, and apparently he was always at the forefront of all of the poo-housery, we'll call it.
He was a troublemaker.
On the road, yeah.
An adorable troublemaker.
Many stories to be read online, which may or may not be true, but that is the internet, and that is the game we all play. Next up, we have Mr. Perfect. Why wasn't he the world bloody champion?
He is one of the guys that should have definitely been mixing it up more with Hogan and being the WWF champion. Lived the gimmick of being perfect.
That's how he got it. It's just like, oh, he's good at everything. Oh, let's call him Mr. Perfect.
But what I enjoy now is that we live in the world where the veneer is slipped slightly, and you can watch, like on the Perfect documentary on the extras, all the takes they did in those vignettes where you'd see Mr. Perfect shooting a perfect basketball, playing the perfect game of golf, playing the perfect game of bowling. It shows all the outtakes where it wasn't perfect. They'd spend all day, and you know what's funny is that TikTok people now do the same thing. They spend all day trying to make it look like they did something effortlessly. Mr. Perfect would have been brilliant on TikTok.
Just call him Mr. TikTok. That was the Mr. Big Trick there.
He was the guy that there was other guys before it, I believe, but I think when you talk about how the Intercontinental Championship is the workhorse championship, I think Mr. Perfect embodies that. Like, it was like you'd have guys like Hogan at the top who wouldn't have the most technical match, but they'd have a popular match.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm not. It's not you. It's me. I had a terrible night's sleep last night.
The 80s, in it. But Mr. Perfect would be the embodiment of like the technical quality match. So definitely in the best.
Moving on.
Now,
lovely singing voice. First and foremost.
I think what we're going to do, very much like with Marty Jannetty, I want to put the Bolsheviks in together.
Fair enough.
Nikolai Volkov and Boris Zukov.
Easy to say.
I'm going to put them in all right.
I was going to say all right. I've not seen too much of them again, but from what I've seen, it was all just about where they were from more than what they would do.
It was all just them like singing the Russian anthem and doing all that malarkey.
They would do it well though.
Oh yeah, it was fine. They were bobbins as wrestlers, and I don't think any of them were from Russia, so that's even funnier. But yeah, fine. Slightly racist tag team.
Papa Shango.
No, I'm trying to think. Papa Shango.
Was he not in the 90s?
I think he was. I wonder whether I put that in erroneously.
We might as well do it. We've said it now.
Shango. Okay, Shango's the exception. If Shango was in the 80s, he'd be lovely, lovely, lovely. It's all right.
I liked it when he made Ultimate Warrior spew in the 90s.
In the 90s. We can't talk about Shango anymore. He's in the 90s.
Is he in the 90s more than the 80s? We'll take him out if that's the
Do you know
case.
what? Do you know what we'll do as well? Just to make this tidy. Jannetty, we've got you. There you go. Sit next to the Rockers in the same category. Bolsheviks, you get another Nikolai, which I think was a song.
Are we going to take a Papa Shango out though? If he is the 90s, is he the?
He is.
When did he debut?
He debuted in the 90s.
Did he? Oh well, he can't be in this bloody list then.
We've had a busy week.
Yeah,
Leave us
we
alone.
have. Yeah, it's
Mr.
Wonderful. We call him Mr. Wonderful.
I'm putting him in lovely, lovely, lovely. Paul Orndorff was the first major feud for Hogan before Bundy. It was like friendship turned bad. The saddest part about the Hogan-Orndorff thing was that Orndorff had problems with his arm, but he was told you can have surgery on your arm that will lengthen your career, or you can carry on and have surgery later. And he was about to start a massive run of house shows with Hogan, make a stupid amount of money at the top of it. He chose that. And unfortunately, because he didn't have surgery and he worked through what should have been, he worked through this terrible injury, he ended up getting, it's the same thing that Kurt Angle has, which is when you're... Atrophy, yeah, his arm atrophied. And so you can watch Paul Orndorff, he makes a couple of appearances in WCW sort of around 99-2000, and you can see where that arm is atrophied because he didn't choose to take the surgery when he did.
His muscles have just shrank and shrank, yeah.
But he took the house show run with Hogan, and I think the most iconic moment was there was a cage match with Hogan and Orndorff, and they both looked like they hit the ground at the same time, and Orndorff came that close, becoming the WWF champion. But great worker, great look, kind of just rungs under in terms of charisma and style for Hogan, but Mr. Wonderful he's wonderful.
Yeah, better than Lex Luger as well. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's just me, but I always picture when he grouped gimmicks into similar gimmick territory. I always pictured Lex Luger when he was the narcissist and the heel in the same breath as Mr.
Similar
Wonderful.
mould as Mr. Wonderful. Yeah, that's a good shout. That is a good
was
shout.
Better, wasn't he? Mm-hmm. Who we got next?
Power and Glory.
So you got Hercules Hernandez.
Oh, we're going to pop him there.
Who's he with?
That is Pretty Paul Roma and Hercules Hernandez.
Paul Roma is someone I've heard a lot about in terms of, was it the story where he was meant to be in some sort of title feud but then got taken out for somebody else?
Well, I know, although the main story I know about Paul Roma is that he was introduced into the Four Horsemen and everybody went, what? What are you doing? Why is he a thing? But they were one of the WWS attempts at making their own Road Warriors, beefy tag team, Power and Glory. And as soon as the Road Warriors came in, they just got trounced. I'm never that interested by them as a team, but they were just about bearable. Come at me.
Well, I've not seen them, so I can't possibly comment. Next up, we have maybe the easiest.
Incidentally, the only thing about Power and Glory I truly remember is a Road Warrior Hawk promo just before WrestleMania. I think it was one in the 90s, where Animal does his thing and he goes, "Tell him, Hawk," and Hawk just goes, "Power and glory, power and glory. That's your name now, but after we're done with you, it's gonna be sour and gory.
That's one hell of a line.
Oh, it's great.
That is one hell of a line. And one hell of an impression. Bloody well done.
This is why I lose my voice every month. Right, this boy.
Macho Man Randy Savage.
Right up there.
What do you need to say?
Workhorse Intercontinental Champion, pre-perfect. I know we said Perfect was the guy that defined that era, but Savage was the guy that was the Intercontinental Champion. And also, it was in sort of the mid-80s, where despite the fact he wasn't feuding with him, Savage would quite often just go, I'm looking at you, Hulk Hogan. It's like, just coming out of the WWF champ. Phenomenal. Mania 3 springs to mind. Steamboat Savage. Divine match still holds up. Savage is the year after that. Savage elevating to the main event, becoming the WWF champion at the end of that tournament. It felt right.
Yeah.
It felt like the time. Sad that like Hogan sort of overshadowed him throughout that, but I guess that became part of the story. But there was nobody like Savage.
No, ever will be again.
Absolutely not. Just an incredible worker.
So next up we have Rick Rude.
Oh.
Another one in the best for me.
Rude's in the best.
It's just an iconic character. The Velveteen Dream nicking his... Did he start that? He must have. I'm not seeing it right.
Oh, no, yeah, Rick Rude.
Putting people on their tights.
Rick Rude would quite often put Jake Roberts' wife on his pants.
Yeah,
among other people.
Jake didn't know that was coming, did he?
Jake was not a fan.
No, Jake didn't know that was coming.
It was hilarious. Rick Rude is just the archetypal, just arrogant heel. Like, the use of the tights was great. He kind of got stuck with the Ultimate Warrior for a while. I always feel like Rude was a more capable wrestler, but Warrior historically, whilst he was great as a character, wasn't the strongest of wrestlers. And so Rick Rude just kind of was stuck with him a little bit there.
Is that what you say?
Yeah, Rude and Heenan, great team.
Yeah.
Should have been WWF champion.
He probably should have.
Another guy I think should have been at the top of the tree.
Fantastic heel champ he would have been with that stash.
Oh, he really
What an image that would have been with that stash and that title. Anyway, moving on. We got the Red Rooster. The famous story, we all know it, the boxer gimmick story. He tries to tell people that they had a boxer gimmicks, and then they gave Mr. Perfect to Mr. Perfect, they gave the Red Rooster to him. And he took it literally, instead of Bruce Pritchard. I don't know, you know what Bruce is like on that podcast, you know what's true and what's not, and what's put through, you know, is sympathising Vince McMahon goggles. That's a catchy phrase, isn't it? But he took it literally, didn't he? Instead of just being the cock of the walk, he was literally a rooster with.
And they kind of brought that onto
thing.
television because Bobby Heenan kept calling him a rooster. Because he's like basically slagging him off saying amateur.
Yeah.
And then one day he went, "You're right, I am a rooster. I'm going to be a rooster."
Cock-a-doodle-doo.
And he was the Red Rooster.
And he was a bit bad, wasn't he?
He was just.
He still works there today, though, in NXT, doesn't he?
Yeah,
Terry Taylor, yeah.
Terry Taylor's a job for life type guy. God bless him.
Yeah. Any other? I don't know what else to say about that. The gimmick story overshadows his career, doesn't it?
Yeah, the Rooster was the guy. The Rooster was the gimmick that just kind of made the guy.
Yeah.
Sadly.
So next up we have the Dragon. Not Izu before you want to go to the comments.
If only it was. I want to put Ricky in the best.
Well, when it looks as a wrestler, nobody could really touch him, could he?
He's a yeah. But then when the sort of the animal. The character era came round in wrestling.
You must breathe fire like Dragon.
They made him into a literal dragon. There was a famous bit where it was Jake Roberts and Ricky Steamboat. I believe this was where Jake Roberts did a DDT on the concrete on Ricky Steamboat. It was the thing we'd never seen before. But then Jake had a snake. Ricky brought a Komodo dragon. And there's this really hokey bit where Jake holds up the snake in the ring. Ricky holds up the Komodo dragon. And they run at each other. And Vince on commentary goes, "The charge!" And then Jake bails. It's just weird. I wonder what the animals were thinking. This Komodo dragon going, "What are you doing?"
They want us to mate with what?
That's not how we work. But even away from the gimmickiness of taking the dragon thing too literally, Ricky Steamboat, great wrestler. I don't know whether, should he have been more in the WWF? Yeah, but I feel like he was more at home, NWA, WCW type, him and Flair.
You could say that his charisma didn't really live up to the gimmicky era of the time in WWF, but his wrestling ability more played up to the NWA.
If he hadn't, if the fact that he didn't really fully gel as a top-tier guy in the WWF. If he had, we'd never have got the Chi-Town Rumble. So, horses, you know, what bit 6 of one, half dozen the other.
Yeah. Plus, you could probably still wrestle rings around everybody who works for WWE today.
He 100% would. 100%
Monster.
would.
So next up we have Rockin' Robin, and to be honest with you, Tom, I've never seen her wrestle.
The half-sister of Jake the Snake Roberts.
Where have you just plucked that from?
My brain.
Wow.
I'm going to put a... All right.
Because she was in an era where, you know, women's wrestling wasn't really at the forefront. The division was thinner than Baron Corbin's
hairline before he shaved. Yeah, it was a really, really ropey time in the women's division. It was the ladies' division, but Rockin' Robin was very much there. Former champ.
Did some things.
Sherri. We'll get to Sherri in a bit. But, all right.
So next up, we have someone who's definitely good in the best. Could well be at the top of the best, Mr. Rowdy Roderick Piper.
Hi, him.
What do you say? A
best.
proper bastard, and also a very good guy as well. But I think that was after the 80s, wasn't it?
The man who punched Cyndi Lauper.
Did he? Oh yeah! Wow. He was just. I missed the old-fashioned heels, maybe, because he was. No, that sounded wrong, didn't it? I just, you know what I meant. I didn't mean it that way. Yeah, just a proper bastard. Obviously, all the big moments in the Piper's Pit with the coconut and this, that, and the other, all the way through until the first WrestleMania main event. Well, no.
Yeah, he headlined. He headlined teaming up with Paul Orndorff
against Mr. T and Big Hulk, Big Tez.
He boxing match with Mr. T the following year.
Which apparently they wanted to do properly, but they wouldn't let him do it. And I think that's a crying shame.
He tried to step away from wrestling the following year, but just came back. There was a great bit where he turned up at WrestleMania 5 with a fire extinguisher. Yeah. So Piper's great. Yeah, nobody can talk quite like Piper. I genuinely believe if he was still with us today, we'd have already had an AEW Dynamite promo.
Well, yeah, I would have been in that AEW ring, picture of Vince on the floor, pissing on it, stuff like that. Just a proper. I hate myself for saying that after you said about the Cyndi Lauper thing. I proper miss heels. Sorry, I'm dying here. It's been a long day.
You're doing great,
anyway.
honey.
Yeah, thank you. No, you're doing great. You're doing all the work here, Gary.
Thank you, Gary.
So next up we have Sensational Sherri, and of course,
Popping right
the top,
up there.
one of a real trailblazer in the fact that she would mix it up with the fellas and take it to the fellas.
She took her lumps from some of the lads.
Lovely lady lumps.
And she would give it back as well. She was iconic with Sherri. She very much put a very thin women's division on her back and carried it for a while as well. But everybody will remember Sensational Sherri not as a wrestler, but more as like the manager, the valet, just the angry, screaming woman around the ringside who was not averse to putting the boots in, and in return getting some of the boots herself. Yeah. I always remember Hogan giving her an atomic drop. Weirdly. Why would he do that? She was being a naughty.
Guess she does have a coccyx as well. That's where the atomic drop hurts, isn't it? So next up,
Vaccix instead.
Next up we have Slick, who I love listening to. I just love listening to Slick.
Yeah, I want to put the Slick in the best. I really do.
He was a proper staple of the 80s, wasn't he?
Yeah, just I got a lovely singing voice, as you heard on the Power Driver album. Yeah. Just a great mouthpiece again for a wrestler that may not have had the vocal ability. He was the manager of the Twin Towers, famously, and I love him. I just think just a cool heel. He really stood out in the way he dressed, the way he moved, the way he spoke.
And again, it's unique. Only he could do what he was doing, which is something that's lost in the WWE today. Is that what you need to say about Slick?
I think that's all we need to say about Slick.
Who the hell is up next, Tom?
Right, now, we ummed and ahed about whether we put in Tito Santana, El Matador, and the model Rick Martel. Now, Rick Martel came along in late '89, and El Matador wasn't really born till the '90s.
Born.
But there were a tag team called Strike Force for most of the 80s. So I've put Strike Force on the list, and I'm putting them in lovely.
I don't think I've ever seen a Strike Force match.
Oh, they were brilliant.
Why?
Mid-80s, just a solid unit as a tag team. They were a bit white meat.
Were they just two good-looking lads who did the wrestles in a really squeaky clean way?
They did, but then they fell out.
Why were they called Strike Force?
Because they struck.
Forcefully.
Forcefully! They were a bit white meat, but they just had a real nice technical style to them. And when they fell out, obviously it gave birth to two very iconic characters from the mid card of the crazy character era of wrestling. And I didn't mind watching them wrestle a couple of times as a tag team. They fought with the Dream Team, among others. They weren't a tag team as the golden era was coming to fruition, but I kind of wanted to give them the nod here and put them in there.
So next up we have the fabulous Rougeaus. Elephant. I was, but I said elephant time and time again, and the sneeze has gone.
Do you need isolation?
No, I'm fine. Sneeze is not one of the symptoms, is it? You're fine, aren't you? So next up, the fabulous Rougeaus, who, well, for Jacques especially, the story with Dynamite precedes him, for me.
Yes.
In my weird, warped universe.
Tell the story.
Well, they had a fight backstage, didn't they?
That's the story.
Jacques knocked Dynamite out? Was that the right way around?
Yeah. They were a bit fiery, weren't they, backstage? Yeah. I love the fabulous Rougeaus. What always makes me smile is they came to the ring with tiny little America flags and stood on the top rope with these SH1T eating grins, waving these little American flags. They were adorable. And obviously, of course, the Rougeaus would have a fantastic wrestling lineage from there. But as a nasty heel tag team, as a smarmy heel tag team, they were stunning. They were stunning in this era. Big fan.
And of course, Jacques gave birth to Kevin Owens, and Kevin Owens doesn't like him for it. Yeah, he trained him, didn't he, early on? Owens went to his wrestling school, and Jacques did some things which Kevin didn't like, or something like that. I bet the story's a lot more gruesome than that, and I've just made it completely unsold. So next up, who the hell do we have, Tom?
We have the Glamour Girls.
Yes.
I'm going to pop them in the bin.
Heard the name, never seen them wrestle. Tell me about them, Tom. Do all the work that you've done for the past 2 hours. I'm very sorry.
Leilani Kai wasn't a
She was a singles champion, wasn't she?
She was indeed, but the Glamour Girls was kind of her tag team. Jimmy Hart was the mouthpiece for them. I don't think they were that great as a tag team. The Jumping Bomb Angels brought out the best in them. I'm sure there's going to be some historians upset that the Jumping Bomb Angels are in lovely, and Glamour Girls are in the bin. But hey, let's all build a bridge and go over that. I'm not a fan of the Glamour Girls.
And who the hell have we got next, Thomas?
Oh, down here, as you can see, that is Pretty Paul Roma.
Oh, who we talked about earlier?
Who we talked about a bit earlier.
What did he do as a singles man?
As a singlesman, not a whole lot. He was power and glory pretty much all the way through. Gonna pop him right there.
Nice and simple.
Simples.
Ultimate Warrior.
Right.
Say what you want to say about him, but he's got to go in the best, hasn't he?
He very much is one of those guys that transcends the industry. Now, he didn't come into his own properly until the Ultimate Challenge, WrestleMania 6, when he defeated Hogan, which would be in the beginning of the 90s. But in the 80s, he became the Intercontinental Champion.
Yeah. But he was still doing the promos, though.
Oh, God, he was still doing the ridiculous promos about lying on the grass and running you over with lawnmowers.
Rocket ships and...
Oh, my God. Sadly, as much as I would love to put him in for that infamous... Tear down the cockpit doors, Hulk Hogan, and shove the plane into a nosedive, Hulk Hogan. I can't because it's in the 90s. But he was a great talker, ridiculous wrestler, was always cream cracker by the time he ran to the ring. But you know what? Love him. Massive part of wrestling history.
He's one of the biggest stars of the wrestling history, isn't he? Yeah.
One of those guys that wasn't the greatest of wrestlers, but transcends
Didn't have to be. Not for the time anyway. Imagine if he rocked up today in NXT doing what he did back then.
Oh, man.
Fantastic.
You get my vote.
Who the hell is that?
Oklahoma! Oh. He had the first ever wrestling wedding. He got married on WWF. I want to say Tuesday Night Titans, or maybe Superstars. I'll put him there. Just like Uncle Elmer. I ain't got much to offer about Uncle Elmer. I thought he was fun.
Wendy Richter. We're moving on?
Yeah.
Do you want to move on? Wendy Richter. Who, I've not seen too much of her. Shock and horror, I know. But apparently she was the best of all the women's wrestlers.
She absolutely was, which is why we're putting her smack bang in lovely. Her and Sherri Martel were very much at the top of a very weak women's division. But Wendy Richter was solid work.
And I feel sorry for her. She got screwed, didn't she? The first proper screw job of Vince McMahon's career.
The Spider Woman.
Fabulous Moolah.
Incredible.
Yeah.
It was, as you say, it was the first wrestling. It was the second wrestling screw job. The first wrestling screw job occurred in 1924.
Just after Vince was born.
Wayne Munn got screwed by Stanislaus Zbyszko when there was a world title fight. Wayne Munn was brought in, couldn't wrestle a lick, but looked all right. Goldust Trio gave him the belt. Stanislaus Zbyszko, old school boy, gets to the ring and says, literally as they're locking up in this match where Munn is meant to go over via squash, the moment the bell rings, Stanislaus locks up with Wayne and goes, "Tonight we're wrestling." And Stanislaus just takes him down 2 falls to nothing and wins the world title and legs it. It's an amazing story. Goldust Trio, Wrestling in the 20s, the podcast. It's on the Cultaholic podcast feed. I tell the whole story in great detail there. You're welcome. But that was a screw job as well.
Yeah,
that was the second screw job in history.
Especially with Moolah involved as well. It was a bit...
Yeah. Now, you may... Moolah's not in this.
No.
It's very, Moolah and Snooker are the elephant in the rooms here. Snooker even. No, the Snooker. That's a billiards game. They're a bit divisive, so I don't know what I mean.
Well, let's celebrate the 80s. I don't know what you do. I don't know.
Virgil!
Virgil!
Celebrate.
The best! Soul Train Jones.
Get my $10! Now, Virgil didn't come into his own until sort of after the 80s. At this point, he was still the
I was going to say...
the bodyguard / servant of
SummerSlam
Ted DiBiase.
92, when he has that match. Was it SummerSlam 92?
Oh, it was.
The pop, and he's wrestling like he's Shawn Michaels. Oh! He gets a bad rap for what he does, Virgil.
I think it's like it shows when you're in the right. It's the right story, and you're in the right ring with the right person at the right time. There's magic.
Yeah.
And Virgil and Ted DiBiase was as a fan. Yeah, let's call a spade a spade.
We can't get too.
As a fan,
Is that still too much?
Nah, that's fine. As a fan, watching Virgil finally give Ted DiBiase his comeuppance. Oh God, I was so invested. I was clamouring for months for Virgil just to pop DiBiase one, and then when he won the $1 million championship, yes!
Yeah.
And then he did bugger all else.
He was in the NWO.
He got squashed by Yokozuna, or Yakazuma as he called him. The powers of pain.
2 big, sweaty men.
And Vince McMahon is quite partial to big, sweaty men.
Yes, he is.
All right, I'm putting them in.
The Warlord was terrifying.
Warlord had with the big W staff.
Yeah. Wow. Wow.
Wow. You could tell why Vince liked him.
Yeah.
Boom.
And about the Barbarian, when you see old timers speaking about who they did the wrestles with, the Barbarian often gets sung as a really undersung hero from back then in terms of what his work rate was. Am I speaking about somebody else?
No. Well, I've heard a lot of stories about the Barbarian. None of them have been about his work rate.
No.
But I might be mistaken.
Really?
Cooking MCs like a pound of bacon.
I might be mistaken as well.
But they're all right. They were another attempt at a Road Warriors-esque team as we turn into as the 80s would become the 90s.
Yeah.
We get the definite articles in. So we'll also pop the solo Warlord with his brother. There you go.
Yeah. Was he not a singles guy a bit later than the 80s, or am I misremembering that? He was certainly early 90s as well, wasn't he? He's a singles man.
I think you misremember.
Maybe, am I? Oh, I know nothing.
I think
Why am I even here?
No, they were both singles guys, but they were quite known as a tag team.
So we've realised something. As we've arrived at Wendy Richter, the actual Wendy Richter, in our list just below the table here. We spoke about a supposed Wendy Richter earlier, because obviously Wendy Richter, as well as having a dark hair, she also had blonde hair for a period of time. That's why I was like, that's Wendy Richter.
That's exactly what I thought as well.
Right, but it's not. We've realised a crucial error here in this tiered list.
Judy Martin. You're all right.
Wendy Richter, who we spoke about earlier. Easy does it. We know what we're talking about. Who are we finishing off this tier list about, Tom?
The Can-Am Connection.
You're right, I've never seen them wrestle. Do the work, you've done it the entire video. You know what you're talking about. I'm a complete fraud.
Good tag team. Not the greatest tag team. Stick them there.
So there we have
it. The Can-Am Connection.
We've arrived at the end of Gary YouTube in the Tom variety, of course. His tiered list for superstars of the 80s. Why I was here, I have no idea. Tom, a massive well done for everything you've achieved over the past hour and a half or so. Thank you very much.
I'd like to apologise to Judy Martin and Wendy Richter for getting you guys the wrong way around because of hair.
Yeah.
Sorry, everybody.
To be fair, it does look like Wendy Richter when it's small. But anyway, that's besides
That's what she said.
Yeah, bloody hell. Anything to plug before we bloody...
I think I've plugged quite nicely as we've rolled along.
Yeah.
I'd like to plug you for watching. You are wonderful. Not in that way.
Sure.
Filthy boy! I'd like to plug you for being brilliant. Whatever you're doing today, I hope you're having a lovely time.
I would like to thank Tom just for saying all of the words that he said during the course of this video, because if he didn't say those words, the video wouldn't have been very long at all. I've been Gary YouTuber, spectator, along with you at home, while Tom has said many things. We hope and pray they are all correct.
Probably not.
We'll see you next time on these tier whatever they are.
Love you,
Gary.
bye. Love you,
Gary,
bye.
Gary.
Love you, bye,
Gary,
bye.
Gary, Gary.